Hey pre-calc students, welcome to our second part of the lesson on polynomial long division. So today we're going to discuss long division problems where we're missing terms in our dividend or divisor, or both. Now, what does it mean to have a missing term? Let's take an example such as x squared plus 2, okay? That is our divisor, and a dividend of x cubed minus 4x plus 1. Okay, so a missing term means that you have to look at the degree. So let's look at just the divisor for now. It's x squared plus 2, right? What is the degree of that binomial? Well, the degree is the highest exponent. The highest exponent is 2. When you're writing polynomials, you're supposed to write them in standard form from biggest exponent to smallest exponent. Well, x squared is the highest exponent. The next term would be a linear term. But do you see how they didn't give us a linear term? It's just x squared plus 2, so they gave us a quadratic, no linear, and then the constant term. That means we're missing a term. And when you're doing long division, you have to fill in, let's call it a place value, okay? You have to fill in that missing term with an appropriate place value. How do we do that? We fill it in with a 0. So we're going to use a coefficient of 0. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it in as 0x. Because again, a quadratic should have a quadratic term, a linear term, and a constant term. If you're missing any of those pieces, you've got to fill them in with a 0. Now let's look at the dividend. The degree of the dividend is x cubed. What is the next highest exponent after x cubed? A quadratic. But do you see that we don't have a quadratic, so then we would have to fill it in with a 0 and call it 0x squared, okay? So after a cubic, you'd have your quadratic. We don't have a term. They didn't give it to us, so we would have to fill in that place value with 0x squared. Then after quadratics come linear terms, and then finally constant terms. So when I go to do my long division, I'm not going to use this setup, the original setup, because we were missing terms. The correct setup would be x squared plus 0x plus 2 as our divisor, and x cubed plus 0x squared minus 4x plus 1. So it is very important for you to have all the place values filled in, even if we weren't given them. Okay, look at the degree to help you. If the degree is 2, a quadratic, then you should have quadratic, linear, and constant, right? And x squared and x, and then a number without a variable. If your highest exponent is 3, a cubic, then you should have a cubic, quadratic, linear, and constant, and so on. It is very important for you to always fill in any missing terms with zeros. So just use a coefficient of 0 to fill them in. If you do not do this, if you don't fill in the missing terms with zeros, your place values are going to be off. So it's very, very important for you to think of this as place values, okay? All right, so we've got a dividend of 4x to the 4th plus 20x cubed. Now notice, it's quartic. The highest exponent is 4. So what comes after quartic? Cubics. We were given a cubic term. After cubics come quadratics, but we're missing the quadratic, so I'm going to fill it in with a 0, x squared. After quadratics come linear terms, and last but not least, constant terms. Your divisor has a cubic term. It is missing the quadratic term and the linear term. So I have to fill both of those in with zeros. Okay, after you fill in your missing terms with zeros, you follow the same steps that you did for previous long polynomial division. Okay, so you're going to focus on the leading term in the divisor and the dividend, and you're going to say, okay, here's what I have. I have a 4x cubed. I want it to be a 4x to the fourth. So what do I need to multiply it with? Well, 4x cubed times x would give me 4x to the fourth, right? 4x cubed times x would give me 4x to the fourth. But you need to distribute that x to all the terms in your divisor. So it's going to be x times 4x cubed, that's 4x to the fourth. 0x squared times x is 0x cubed, or you can just put 0. 0x times x is 0x squared, or you can just put 0. And then negative 1 times x, which is negative 1. Now remember, you have to subtract each one of these terms. So this subtraction sign changes the signs of all of these terms, okay? So feel free to distribute this subtraction, this negative, and change all the signs of everything in here. 4x to the fourth minus 4x to the fourth is 0, so those cancel. 20x cubed minus 0x cubed is 20x cubed. So, right, if you subtract nothing from 20x cubed, you get 20x cubed. 0x squared minus 0x squared is 0x squared. You need to keep a place value for the x squareds, okay? So even if you just put a 0, that's fine, but you need to hold its place value. So you have to put either a 0 or 0x squared there. And then negative x minus negative x, okay, negative x minus negative x is 0. So negative 1 minus negative 1 is 0. But again, I'm going to hold its place value and put a 0 there. Look at your divisor. Your divisor had 4 terms. So before you repeat the cycle of figuring out what you need to multiply up here and distribute to your divisor before you subtract, you need to have the same amount of terms in your dividend, in your division, as the terms that are in the divisor. So if your divisor has 4 terms, you need 4 terms in here. So I need to bring down the negative 5. Now repeat the steps. I have 4x cubed and I want 20x cubed. So what do I need to multiply it with to get, what do I need to multiply 4x cubed with to get 20x cubed? I just need to multiply by 5. 5 times 4x cubed is 20x cubed. 5 times 0x squared and 5 times 0x gives me both zeros, values of zeros. And then 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. Now I am going to subtract each one of those terms. So again, you can distribute the subtraction, distribute the negative, and change the signs. 20x cubed minus itself is 0. 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 0 is 0. So these quadratic and linear terms turn to 0. Negative 5 minus negative 5, or negative 5 plus 5 if you distribute the negative, becomes 0. So there is no remainder for this problem. Make sure that you write your final answer correctly. So the answer to f of x over g of x, so to this division, is x plus 5, no remainder. Okay, so the main difference between this lesson and the one that we did before is that you have to be vigilant. So you have to watch out to see if we're missing any terms, because you need to have a term, even if it's just a 0, for every single place value, so for every single exponent. Look at the degree to help you. The dividend that has the highest degree of x cubed. Well, what comes after the cubics? The quadratics. We were given a quadratic term. That's 5x squared. What comes after quadratics? Linear terms. They gave us a linear term. And after linear terms come the constants. So we are not missing any terms in the dividend. But the divisor, the highest exponent, is x squared. What comes after x squared? The linear term. So we're missing a linear term. I'm going to fill it in with a 0x. and then after linear terms come the constants. Now I'm going to start the process of focusing on what I have and what I want it to be. So I have x squared, but I want it to be x cubed. So I'm going to multiply by x to the first power. How come? Because x times x squared is x cubed, x times 0x is 0x squared, and x times -2 is -2x. So you have to distribute that number with every single term from your divisor. Then you subtract. If you want, you can distribute this negative and change the signs to all of your terms. Okay? X cubed minus x cubed, any number subtracted from itself is 0, so those cancel. 5 minus 0, so 5x squared minus 0x squared, that's just going to be 5x squared, right? If you have 5x squared and you subtract 0, nothing from it, you keep what you had. Now, -2x minus -2x, so just think about that. -2x minus -2x becomes 0. Even though it cancels to 0 and we still have another term to bring down, don't leave it blank. Like, you need to have something here to hold its place value, okay? You don't want to bring down the 1 and then put it where the x's need to go. So take a look at long division. In place values, right, they should always match up. The x cubes should be lined up, the x squareds, the quadratics, the linears. So you want to make sure that you don't accidentally put the 1, right, which is a constant term, under where the column that has the linear terms. Okay, then I repeat the process. I have x squared, but I want 5x squared. So I need to multiply by 5, positive 5. 5 times x squared is 5x squared. 5 times 0x is 0x, and 5 times -2 is -10. Now I'm going to subtract each one of those terms. 5x squared minus 5x squared is 0. 0x minus 0x is 0. And 1 minus -10 is 11. Okay, now remember, it's 1 minus -10. So if you want to, you could distribute that subtraction sign, right, and change the -10 to a +10 if you feel like it'll make it easier for you. But we are subtracting 1 minus -10, which is 11, not -9. So we almost got the same answer as the previous example, right? The other one had an x plus 5 as well, but this one has a remainder. So don't forget, the proper notation for remainders is to say the quotient of f of x and d of x. And now that I think about it, did I put d of x or g of x? Ooh, I put g when it should have been d. Super sad. That was d of x. Force of habit, right? I always use f of x and g of x, and this time it's d of x for divisor. Okay, so our solution or our answer to this quotient, to this division problem, is x plus 5 plus a remainder of 11, which needs to be written over the divisor. Now, you can put the original divisor, or you can put the divisor where you filled in the missing piece. You don't have to fill in the missing piece when you're writing your answer, but you do need to fill out the missing piece, the missing term, with a 0x when you're actually doing the process of long division. So that was the purpose of the lesson today, guys, is if you're going to set up a long division, you need to have a place value for every single term, even if it was missing in the original problem. So always look at the highest exponent to help you decide how many terms you should have. In a cubic, so take a look at f of x here, right? In the original problem, f of x was a cubic. So you should have a cubic, quadratic, linear, and constant. So that's 4 terms. Cubics need to have 4 terms. Quadratics have a quadratic, linear, and constant. So those need to have 3 terms. just make sure that you always have the terms that you need to set up and hold the place values for the missing terms. Okay? As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and let us know if you need any help. Send a message on Remind, send an email, but I hope you guys have a good day. Adios.